Sunshine, 12 kilometres from Melbourne CBD, one of the 3 suburban rail loop super hubs in all of Melbourne. The airport rail commencing with first stage works right here, and most investors are asking whether it's worth buying at all or falling in the 12 kilometre CBD trap. And the honest answer isn't yes or no. It's which pocket do you focus your attention in? Because the suburb that everyone names when you say Sunshine is the one that the 10-year data tells me to walk away from. Today, I'm going to rank 5 pockets of this corridor with the numbers and tell you exactly where the opportunistic buy is. Is Sunshine worth it? Let's find out. Here's what we're covering. First, what the SR Rail Super Hub and the Airport Rail designation actually mean for this corridor and why investors simply don't understand what they're buying into. Then I'll walk you through the 5 pockets from the Sunshine CBD Hub to St Albans with the price, the yield, and the specific reason each one even makes the list or falls off it. And last, we'll finish with my single pick, the one suburb where the opportunity is lying right now with a clear value add creation plan, and the one that looks obvious where I'd actually be talking most investors out of it. By the end, you'll have a clear answer, not just is Sunshine worth it, but exactly where in the corridor best opportunity sits right now. Let's go. What's being built? You're standing here and you're standing on one of the only 3 suburban rail super hubs in all of Melbourne, alongside Clayton and the scheduled Broad Meadows. The Suburban Rail Loop will simply connect regional V-Line passengers directly into the middle suburbs without going through beautiful Melbourne gridlock CBD. That's a step change in employment and housing demand for this entire precinct. Behind me, we've got the super hub station of Sunshine, along with the bus corridor. The Albion corridor and the Sunshine becomes that key interchange node connecting the airport to the metro network. It's bus stop galore down here. And since February this year, the metro tunnel has already put Sunshine on the Sunbury and Werribee lines with direct CBD access into Parkville and State Library train stations. So have a think about it. 3 rail projects, an activity centre designation, 12 kilometres from town. This is a genuine funded structural demand story, not waiting an announcement on a budget. So let me tell you what the best suburb actually means before we start. A real discount to a comparable neighbour that isn't justified by amenity, infrastructure that's committed and funded and not just announced for an electoral election. And we've got vacancy rates under 2%, but also with renovation potential that manufactures equity and improves on yield, and an owner-occupier demand that is shifting in the upward trajectory. Run every pocket against those 5 things and the obvious answer stops being obvious. There are 5 pockets in this corridor and there are 5 very different trades. Sunshine Central, the epicenter, the name that everyone knows, around that 935k for a house on a 2.98% yield. It has a decent socio-demographic curse out of 4 with an affordability at 51 years to own and a 40% rented to owner ratio. For local owner occupiers staying on home ground for around 12 years plus. We then move to Sunshine West, cheaper at an 890k price, but the strongest 10-year growth record in the postcode. An improving stock on market and very low building approvals for this suburb at only around 12 approved homes. And the owners are staying on an average 11 years plus with an exciting 75% auction clearance rate recorded at the time of recording, with the lowest vacancy rate of the entire top 5 at 0.85%. Sunshine North, a balanced entry on houses at a median of 855 with an average socio-demographic score of a nurse out of 2 and a much higher affordability of 57 years to own, and the only increasing cycle in the unit type at 5.3% yield with a 29% rented to owner occupier ratio. What is particularly increasing is the unit market remains strongly affordable, 35 years to own, which is 22 years less than the houses, and is in the early recovery stages that is evident from the recent drop on stock on market, followed by recent days on market reducing from the past 3-month rolling short-term average. Albion, The trap, the cheapest unit in metropolitan Melbourne with a yield north of 8%. However, a historically poor capital growth decline over the past 7 years at minus 6.5% at its lowest peak. And last, St Albans, a major terminus and a classic catch-up play as the capital is moving wild west. Particularly weakest fundamentals for lower socio-demographic is out of 1. And guess what? The highest affordability at 61 years to own at an 800k median price point. Same postcodes, 4 of them, 5 completely different decisions, very different markets of their own, all underpinned by a strong social infrastructure corridor across the heart of the Sunshine Central CBD, housing a massive Bunnings, the Vic Roads Hub, Brisbane City Council headquarters where all your plans get approved, Sunshine Hospital, the Women's Children's Hospital, Victoria University St Albans campus. So what do we do next? Let's simply rank them. My pick is Sunshine West Homes. Here's why. When you run the entire 360 data points, the research, what is happening in Sunshine West and Sunshine CBD, not the headline metrics in isolation, Sunshine West comes out on top. The 10-year compounded price growth is 70.2%, the strongest of any suburb in that 30-20 postcode. Vacancy rate is where it gets exciting, 0.85%, tightest in the entire corridor, which means tenants are not competing for stock, not for the other way around. The auction clearance rate is 75%, the highest in the corridor with very little to zero vendor discounting. Homes is selling in 30 days within the asking range. That combination tells buyers what to be here and where the quality stock is being paid for. At a typical price point of $895, it is much cheaper than that Sunshine CBD. The value creation angle is specific here. Sunshine West has established streets, a higher proportion of original condition homes on land that supports that renovation value add play, and a buyer pool that's been improving as the infrastructure story is putting the owner occupiers into a much more affordable pocket of the Sunshine Hub. Acquire a well-located house, renovate to a genuine owner-occupier standard, and hold it over for 7 to 10 years time frame, and you're expressing the full Sunshine infrastructure phases through the data's highest rated suburb. The one that I walked away from, this is the obvious answer. The station, the super hub, the airport rail. It's a suburb that everyone names and literally hangs out at. And that is exactly the problem. The 10-year compounded growth for Sunshine CBD homes is 47.9%, the lowest of any pocket in that postcode 3020. The 5-year figure is 8.1% in total, and that is under 1.6 a year in the 5 straight years. And simply the yield has really compressed down to under 3%. The auction clearance rate is a whopping 58.9%, meaning 4 out of 10 properties are failing to sell at auction. Yes, the Sunshine CBD has the best ERSAD score in the corridor and the best years to own on houses. These are all genuine positives and key fundamentals. They're overwhelmed by a capital growth story that simply hasn't delivered at the highest entry price in the corridor. This is where lost opportunity is in. The suburb with the best name recognition is not the suburb with the best data profile for stand-alone passive buy and hold. However, from a value-add and multi-unit dwelling development, this postcode will deliver the pot of gold where the activity centre planning regime supports a multi-dwelling townhouse and unit developments. Look at that disparity. This is what I'm saying, the opportunity in the heart of Sunshine, 1.3 million. Sunshine North, 1.32. Sunshine North, 1.35. Followed by Sunshine West, 700k. My thoughts are buy Sunshine West. And this is what we're seeing out in this corridor. Very different suburbs, very different market cycle, very different buyer demographic, very different buyer demand, but also homes are quite different in nature. That's why we do what we do. Not all suburbs are created equal. Not all suburbs will get you the same amount of capital growth. As an investor, you want to be able to maximize and give your capital the best opportunity and foundation to grow over time. And this is my job of what I do. Before the verdict, 2 pockets where the window hasn't closed. Sunshine North units are the only asset class in this whole postcode that the cycle model is showing a rapid increase at a 530-ish price point on a 5.10% yield. And that yield plus a growth window for a budget of under 550 is pretty awesome. An Albion unit with a yield at 8.21%, the highest in the corridor, with a fantastic year to own at only 50%. That is the best out of the Sunshine corridor. But I'll be honest with you, that comes with a higher vacancy rate of 2% and a 10-year growth of barely 1% across 10 years. A yield of that high is a market compromising for risk. A cycle play where the investor wait and exit, and not a property that a family is going to compete for at resale. So buyer beware, reassess it twice, 3 times before you make the deep dive purchase on the basis of an 8.21% yield play in a market that has barely grown over 10 years. So what's the one mistake people make in the Sunshine corridor? They take the infrastructure narrative with an investment phases without testing whether the numbers are working in today's entry price. It sounds like the same. It is simply not. The infrastructure is real. We are in the epicenter of Sunshine. It is also public knowledge. It has been here for years. It's active. At Sunshine Central CBD, the answer is yes. At a 935k median price on 4% annual growth over a decade, at 2.99% yield with a borrowing capacity of about 6.5% interest rates, run the numbers and you're roughly 1.7k a month out of pocket every month to hold in the asset cycle model that is already touching the peak. So I want you to run 3 tests before you commit to anywhere. Number 1, does the yield cover enough of your borrowing costs that you can hold through the full cycle without being forced to sell? Number 2, are you entering at the beginning of a growth run or at the top one? Number 3, when you eventually sell, who is competing to buy? Investors, owner-occupiers, developers. Buy the suburb where the 10-year data earns the entry price, not the suburb where the headline story does. And Sunshine CBD does exactly that. Worth it ranking. Sunshine West houses is the pick, the strongest 10-year growth at 70.2% with the tightest vacancy of the pack at 0.85%. We've got a good solid 75% auction clearance rate and cheaper than the actual CBD of Sunshine. Worth it. Sunshine North, this is where we dive into units, budget window, the only increasing cycle asset class in the postcode of 3020 at 5.10% yield at the 530k price point for budgets under 535k. Worth it. Sunshine North houses, this is where your balance entry comes into play. 3.4% yield, very little discounting and a 29-day absorption rate. The most active buyer competition in this corridor. Worth it. Albion, the unit yield play at a whopping 8.21% yield, but a 1.95% vacancy and only a 1% growth across 10-year historical performance of 6.54% and at its lowest. An investor-weighted exit only, I would be opting out of this particular pocket. St Albans houses are playing the catch-up here. Early cycle, a 5 to 10-year patient hold as the capital is moving into the west. The caution here is with low, weak fundamentals at very low socio-demographics and a high affordability, but also increasing supply paired with recent longer days on market. I would say watch that market. Don't rush into it unless you're getting a rip over bargain price. Sunshine CBD houses, this is where we're at the weakest 10-year growth at 47.9% at the corridor's top price point with a low yield of about 3%, 58.9 clearance rate, and that is simply a walk away for a standard buy and hold that has no potential for a value add renovation or simply a multi-unit development potential. This is where development play leverages the activity centre play and all planning permits that are in place. So the answer, yes, but only in the right pocket. Sunshine is worth it if you are buying in Sunshine West and the data and the research and the opportunity. Treat Sunshine North and the Albion units as a deliberate yield play and accept a lower capital growth. Stay away from the Albion units and walk past this suburb everyone names, which is Sunshine CBD. Same postcode, only the right pocket is clearing the bar. If you want to know whether a specific suburb or a property passes the Insight 2 framework and litmus test, the data, the cycle position, the exit pool, the renovation brief, the development brief and potential, but also what is happening on the ground, this is exactly what we do. The link is in the description. Subscribe if this was useful. And of course, I'll see you on the next one.